Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first of all, we're going to talk about the Easter ceasefire, more precisely about the ending of the ceasefire and about the war that was resumed this night. According to information we have, the Easter truce declared by Russia from 6 p.m. Moscow time on April 19th till 12 a.m. Moscow time on April 21st has expired. As Dmitry Peskov told us, the president did not give any orders to extend the Easter truce. So that was the statement of the special and the, let's say, official representatives of Vladimir Putin. This morning on the 21st of April, we got also the report of the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, where we got additional details. So, in accordance with the order of the Supreme Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation, all troops groups in the Special Military Operation Zone strictly observed the ceasefire from the 6 p.m. on April 19th till 12 a.m. on April 21st and remained at previously occupied lines and positions. Despite the announcement of the Easter truce, Ukraine armed formations continued to fire artillery and strike with unmanned aerial vehicles at the positions of our troops, Russian troops, as well as at civilian targets in the border areas of the Belgorod, Bryansk, Kursk regions and the Republic of Crimea of the Russian Federation. So, according to the Russians, a total of 4,900 violations of the ceasefire were recorded. So, the Russians resumed their offensive operations, the Russians resumed the special military operation, and you know that this upcoming week is going to be very difficult for Ukraine. Right after the Russians resumed their offensive, we start receiving lots of updates how the Russians began bombing and attacking the territory of Ukraine with the drones, so with aircrafts. The Ukrainian sources started publishing different maps. In this map, for example, we can see how the Russians were using aviation to attack the Sumi direction, and later, and the most important, that the Ukrainians published this very important photo where we can see once again alarms in the northern, eastern and the southeastern parts of Ukraine, which means that the Russians, let's say, answered the special military operation in full strength. Obviously, this upcoming week is going to be very difficult for Ukraine because, according to different sources, the United States of America want Ukraine to accept the demands of the United States of America and the Russian Federation. For example, today we got a very important statement from Kellogg, the special envoy, Trump's envoy. He said that US is tired of Ukraine conflict. We got too many other issues in the world. So according to information we have this week, if the Russians or the Ukrainians decline the settlements of the conflict in Ukraine, then most likely the United States of America will quit this process, and then Ukrainians will be forced to face the Russians one-to-one, face-to-face, without any support from the, let's say, from the United States of America. We know that the European Union will continue to support Ukraine no matter what. According to sources in the Wall Street Journal, the US proposal includes recognizing Crimea as a part of Russia and preventing Ukraine from joining NATO. In addition, the US proposes to assign neutral status to the territories around the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant and transfer them under Washington's control. This could help resolve the conflict in Ukraine, the author of the article argues. So most likely the Russians will never accept the nuclear power plant of Zaporozhye to be in hands of the United States of America. Anyway, this is a very important week, so let's wait and see what is going to be next. But as for now, the Russians continue their offensive operation. We have several updates. First, let's talk about the Sumi direction, where the Russians continue their offensive, and according to several pro-Russian resources, the village of Demidovka in the Belgorod direction is completely cleared and under the control of the Russian armed forces. So according to several pro-Russian resources, the Ukrainians were forced to fall back from this territory. Now let's move further. As for the Kupiansk direction, the most important and the biggest number of updates is coming from the Leman direction, where the Russians managed to improve their position significantly. First of all, let's talk about the Borova direction. According to information we have, during the previous of 24-48 hours, the Russians managed to establish complete control over the village by the name of Mykhailivka. This information was provided by the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, and later this information information was confirmed by different mappers, mainly pro-Russian and neutral resources. As for the beginning of the 21st of April of 2025, we still haven't received even a single video that can confirm this, but most likely today or the day after, during this week, the Russians will provide us another video how the Russian soldiers, let's say, raised their flag, the Russian flag, on the territory of this settlement. Another important is that the Russians continue their offensive operation in the direction of the settlement by the name of Nova, trying to outflank the settlement from the south and to attack the village of Lipova. So this information was provided by pro-Ukrainian resources. According to them, the Russians indeed managed to improve their positions around the settlement of Nova Katerinovka, and according to pro-Ukrainian sources, as you can see, according to this map, they colored the territory of the village of Novy Mykhailivka as a contested area. Once again, according to pro-Russian resources and the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation, this village was taken by the Russians completely. So we see that the Russians are at the final stage of the battle for this territory. Soon the Ukrainians would be forced to fall back from this area completely, which will allow the Russians to regroup themselves to create a very strong foothold for further offensive operation in many directions, including the settlement of Barova, including the settlement of Oskol and the city of Izum, and of course in the direction of the settlement of Liman. As for the Liman direction, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians also managed to improve their positions in the vicinity of the settlement of Torske. We came to this conclusion based on the video that was published by the Ukrainian sources. In this video, we have a lot of episodes how the Ukrainians were FPV droning, how they were attacking the soldiers of the armored force of the Russian Federation around the settlement of Torske with a significant number of drones. So based on this video, we have adjusted the map because one of the episodes was geolocated exactly in this point. So we have colored, as you can see, the contested area, this territory, this pocket, these small tree lines were considered as a contested area. Now we have proofs that the Russians managed to shorten the distance to the northeastern part of the settlement of Torske for just something around 1 kilometer or even less. So this is the situation in the ground. Now let's move further. Let's discuss another very important area, the Kostiantynivka direction, where the Russians continue their offensive operation. And during the previous 24 hours, we received a lot of updates that confirm Russian control and Russian advance on the ground. First, let's talk about the pockets along the Seversky Donetsk-Donbass Canal between the city of Chasiv and the city of Toretsk. According to information we have, the Russians began assault operation in the direction of the settlement by the name of Southern Delivka. Today, pro-Ukrainian sources published this video, and this video we can see how the Russians using motorcycles were attacking the positions of the armored forces of Ukraine, how the Russians managed to outflank the Ukrainians and to take under control several strongholds, while the main Russian army continued advancing, moving very slowly but in the direction of this area. So based on this video, we have adjusted the northern part of the settlement of the southern Delivka. So for example, this is the situation by the end of the 20th of April. I remind you that yesterday we got first update that the Russians improved their positions. So let's start even earlier. This is the situation by the end of the 19th of April, and this is basically the moment when the Russians began their offensive operation. By the end of the 21st of April, the Russians managed to improve their positions. We have geolocations where Ukrainians were FPV droning the positions of the armored force of the Russian Federation on the territory of these three lines that go from the settlement of Druzhba towards the village of Delivka. And by the beginning of the 21st of April, we got this video where the Russians were using tens of motorcycles and stormtroopers to take under control this territory. So we believe that during the next several days, the village of Delivka, the southern Delivka, would be taken by the Russians completely. And this is obviously going to be very important progress because this will open the Russians the roads to attack the Ukrainian positions along the railways. So this is very important roads, and the Russians most likely will try to use it, trying to cut these pockets from supply and support. So we see that the Russians are very focused in these pockets, trying to cut and trying to shorten the lines. Another important thing, we got another video from the village of Nilipovka where we can see how the Ukrainians were attacking the Russian units. It's very difficult to understand whether the video is fresh or maybe this is archived video from those days when the Russians break through the Ukrainian defense belt. As for now, we don't know for sure, but obviously we see that most likely the Russians still control this territory. Another important update is coming from the village of Shcherbynovka. According to several pro-Russian resources, the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to restore control over these fields and to enter the eastern part of the settlement of Shcherbinovka, which is under the control of the 12th Special Brigade of Azov, which is a part of 1st Corps of the National Guard. So we see that the Russians continue advancing in this area, and the Kostiantynivka direction still the primary target for the Russians. When talking about the southern Kostiantynivka direction or the Kliban-Bykska direction, the Russians during the previous 24 hours managed to improve their positions and to almost take under complete control the village of Sukhaya Balka. This information was confirmed by pro-Ukrainian sources, by neutral resources, and by pro-Russian resources. So as you can see, the Ukrainians control just the farms and some territory in the northern part of the settlement, which most likely would be taken by the Russians in the very near future. We expect that today or tomorrow the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation will provide us first numbers, first videos regarding this territory, and obviously we see the Ukrainians most likely during the next 48 hours will abandon their positions in this area towards more reliable positions in the vicinity of Romanovka. So we see that the Russians continue advancing, and most likely then the Russians will try to cut this pocket between the settlement of Kalinova and the settlement of Valentinovka. This will allow the Russians to maintain the lines, to shorten the lines, and to get as close as possible to the village of Stara Mykhailivka. Now let's move further. As for the Novopavlovka direction, the Russians still haven't managed to answer the village of Bogatyr, despite reports that we got from pro-Russian resources that the first Russian assault groups managed to do this. As for now, we see that the Russians still try to destroy vehicles and the positions of the armored forces of Ukraine around the south and the southeastern part of the settlement, but it's just a matter of time whether the Russians will make another attempt, and when the next attempt is going to be successful. We expect that very soon the Russians will attack the village of Bogatyr once again, and then the battle for the settlement begins. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.